Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. This episode is covering the Republican primary and why Trump has gotten in the bag and no other candidate pretty much has a chance at the Republican nomination. Before we get started, please like the video and subscribe to the channel to get more content like this and share this video with a friend so we can get ourselves out in the algorithm. Before I start, I would also like to mention that about only 10% of you guys are subscribed to the channel. So if you want more content like this and you want to get these videos out to other people as much as we can, please subscribe to the channel. Just click the red button down below so we can get more content out like this. And here we go. So pretty much, if we look at RCP, right, it's pretty clear that Trump has an overwhelming, lead in the Republican nomination. Even in April, DeSantis was only behind him by about 15 points. So it seemed like it could have been a competitive primary, but DeSantis has almost lost two-thirds of his support since he announced and since the indictment. This was actually right around Trump got indicted, and Trump kind of had a boost in the polls because of that, pretty much. And each time he's gotten indicted, he pretty much gets a boost every single time. And now he kind of had this like big boost here, pretty much, I believe. And then now he's kind of maintained this lead, and now he actually is at his highest. He's at his highest point that he's ever been in the Republican nomination. He hit a new record high. This is the highest he's polled nationally for the Republican nomination. And so if you look at these polls, pretty much, Trump's polling in the low 60s, high 50s, and DeSantis is competitive with Haley in some of these polls. Haley's actually catching up to him in some of these national polls, which are really not that good for him. If you go to Iowa, Trump usually does not necessarily perform super well in the state of Iowa. And usually the nomination winner doesn't tend to win in Iowa. The electorate here is more college Republican based, and Trump still has a massive lead in the Iowa caucus. If you look at the New Hampshire primary, Trump is up by 30 points, and Haley's actually ahead of DeSantis in the aggregate. Haley recently surpassed DeSantis, and even Christie at one point actually passed DeSantis in the polling for New Hampshire, which says a lot about DeSantis's campaign. A lot of paid actors, going too far to the right on certain things, and it's just not going to work, in my personal opinion. If you look at South Carolina, he has a massive lead in South Carolina. Haley's actually ahead in South Carolina as well. And if you look at the state of Nevada, there's not too much polling, but they're pretty much smoking. Trump is smoking everybody, for the nomination there. And this is kind of your map pretty much with all of the current candidates that are kind of in the race. I mean, at this point, guys, I think Trump wins, most of the delegates here. He probably is going to get about half the delegates. Christie gets maybe two. Actually, Hudson maybe gets two. Doug Burgum maybe gets three. Nikki Haley gets a couple of delegates. Maybe DeSantis barely gets a few delegates as well. Um, maybe Tim Scott gets about like, maybe Tim Scott gets like two. Vivek Ramaswamy gets one, and maybe this World Herd guy gets one, which puts Trump already at a pretty high, count. And if you look at New Hampshire's another state where he has a even bigger lead, where he probably gets more delegates. Asa Hutchinson, by then, I'm assuming, would already drop out, as well as Chris Christie. Doug Burgum, I think, would stay in the race a little bit longer, and I actually think that he'd get more delegates. I think Tim Scott and Vivek would pretty much drop out already, so it'd be them four. And after New Hampshire, as South Carolina, Trump comes in with a big victory there. Nikki Haley gets a few delegates there. Ron DeSantis gets a couple, and Doug Burgum probably gets one. Trump gets pretty much the rest of the delegates here, kind of just destroys her. And pretty much at that point, Nikki Haley wouldn't even be running anymore, as well as not Doug Burgum either. So it's just Trump and DeSantis, and Trump probably trounces DeSantis in the state of Nevada, getting about 18 to 8 delegates. which probably ends up here. And at this point, DeSantis would pretty much, drop out of the race, as well as all the other candidates, which would lead Trump to pretty much getting every single, at that point, Trump would pretty much get every single delegate in the primary after all the candidates drop out. He'd just come here and sweep every single, one of these states after the fact, that the delegates hold on. And that's assuming that some people, don't even hold on to their delegates. So really, Trump, after the first four states, I'm assuming a lot of the candidates would pretty much drop out, and Trump would get a massive victory in the primary. He'd probably win every state. I mean, you could have made the case before that he could have lost Colorado to DeSantis. Maybe Nevada would have gone to DeSantis. Maybe Texas, Kansas would have gone to DeSantis. Montana would have. Oregon, Washington, California. Like DeSantis kind of had a legitimate path to the primary before. He probably would have won the primary in Illinois, would have won in some of these northeastern states, maybe not necessarily New York, but definitely like Massachusetts, Connecticut, New Jersey, Virginia would have been a DeSantis win. Georgia probably would have been a DeSantis win, and even Florida and South Carolina to an extent. And maybe even a state like Missouri probably would have been a primary win. So DeSantis had a real shot at the nomination, but I just don't see how he could legitimately win the nomination. I think it's time for the Republican Party to kind of come together and coalesce around Trump, stop wasting money, and get him on board as the united candidate so they could face Biden in the general election, have an easier time taking him out. Again, in the 2022 midterms, one of the reasons why Republicans underperformed is because there were a bunch of divisive primaries that the establishment like McCarthy and Mitch McConnell and these people were screwing down ballot in order to stop them because they're quote unquote Trump Republicans and they don't agree with that, and they'd rather lose to the Democrats and end up working as the uniparty than getting their own candidates to even win the general election. So we need those people gone. We need to unite around Trump as the Republican candidate. And that's pretty much it for this video, guys. If you guys liked the video, please like it, subscribe to the channel, and share this with a friend to get it out in the algorithm. Remember, only 10% of you guys are subscribed to the channel, so please, if you enjoyed this short view of the Republican primary, please click the subscribe button, and I'll see you guys the next day.